Well, Scott, thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Scott Shefty. I'm up here in Minnesota, in the United States of America, and I don't know, I'm 69 years old, I guess, getting older, so I'm running out of energy. I got a lot of things wrong with me health-wise, but I managed to mosey around a little bit, but I can't do nearly as much stuff as I used to. And I'm the executive director of the Minnesota Space Frontier Society up here in Minnesota. And so we do have a few activities. We go to a lot of conventions, and we host a lot of sessions with school kids, and host a few science fairs and things like that to assist with them. So we do a lot of stuff. We have a moderate budget of about $2,000 a year or so, and we manage to do a few events with that, like Astronomy Day and Space Week, and we go, like I said, we help host a few conventions up here, mostly science fiction conventions and things. So we've been going since I think we incorporated in 1978, or was it? No, 1983. I don't know, somewhere around then. A long time ago. I'm dating myself pretty bad because I was one of the founding members. But it took us a good 5 years to become a nonprofit organization. So we started out as L5 Minnesota, which was a offshoot from the L5 Society. And then they kind of went under, but we kept going, and they merged with the National Space Society. And we were kind of an independent auxiliary of both groups. So, now we're still an auxiliary group with the Moon Society. So we got a lot of associations and things. And there's basically a core group of it varies between 5 to 10 people that are working on space-related activities up here.
That's really neat. And whenever you engage with the public, what are some common reactions they have in terms of, or common views they have about us going out into the rest of the solar system?
Well, the young kids seem to be a little more interested. I guess all the kids go through the stage of being interested in space, but a few stay interested even longer. But and then we have quite a few people. Maybe I'd say maybe 10% of the people are pretty strongly supportive, and some of them join up and become members and actually contribute money once in a while and help put on some of the events that we sponsor.
Do you get the impression that people feel like we're actually going to move humanity beyond the Earth, or for most people, is that still kind of beyond their believability?
Well, I think when we landed on the moon, that gave it a lot of credibility. People realized that space is a real place. Of course, there's been a lot of science fiction people writing about space, and we do derive a tremendous amount of benefits from some of the space activities. And of course, one of the big things was geosynchronous orbit that was invented by Arthur C. Clarke. And that was, of course, many of these things that people think about, don't really actually become realized for, 20, 30, 50 years. I know Arthur C. Clarke invented the idea of geosynchronous satellites, but it was a long time before that actually got realized. And of course, he got no benefit from it because he invented it so long before even patents would allow for that kind of extended time period. So I think nowadays things are very much more active, especially now that there's so much commercial space going on with launches and things, and the price of space orbits is getting to be cheaper. And of course, we're getting back into a space race with China, where previously it was Russia, and I think Russia's kind of fallen to number 3 on all this stuff. And we're still trying to hang in there, but China is really doing an awful lot of things in space right now. And there's also, other countries like India and Japan are doing a few things too. So there's a lot going on. And I think that gets a lot of people's interest.
Yeah, it's hard to get people excited about something that's going to happen several decades out, but if it's happening tomorrow, they'll be right. Like, whoa,
and
let's
we're talking about
it.
being back on the moon in 2024. That's the goal. So we'll see how well we achieve that. I'm hoping Congress will provide enough funding for that to continue.
It's
Of
funny
course,
though.
I think one of the things people don't really conceptualize, they can think about going into space, but they think, space is just like a space station, and that's all it is. But as Douglas Adams said in his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, space is really big, and so incredibly big. And I think people don't really understand how huge it is. It's just Earth is just a pebble compared in an ocean of pebbles that compared to how big space is.
Yeah, I mean, I think people kind of have this misconception that Earth is really big and it's all that there is. Um, and I think even like looking at our sun, people kind of understanding that the stars, some of them are suns like ours, and some of them are actually billions and billions of suns like ours.
Exactly. So I'm going to show you a Hitchhiker's Guide is one of my favorite books. So I'm going to show you my entryway here. I've got a few things on display here I kind of wanted to show off. So hold on a second while I aim the camera at that. You can see the Hitchhiker's Guide poster.
I see it. Yeah, especially like the introduction to the Hitchhiker's Guide. Do you remember that?
Not specifically about the interstate destruction of things, and I don't know what are you specifically referring to?
Um, let me bring it up real quick.
All right, here I have can you see the picture of a broken down spacecraft crawler?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a picture by David Egge, one of our Minnesota artists. And then at Diversicon, me and my sister made a bottle cap rocket ship.
Oh, that's out of bottle
2
caps,
years ago at the
Wow.
Diversicon convention. So we do a lot of activities like that, but I kind of wanted to show off a few things here that I had in my entryway.
But just going back to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I especially love the first 3 paragraphs of the intro. So just to remind you what it was, far out in the uncharted backwaters at the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descendant life forms are so amazingly primitive they still think digital watches are a pretty neat idea. The planet has, or rather had, a problem, which was this. Most of the people living on it were unhappy for pretty much at the time. Many solutions were suggested for this problem, but most of these were largely concerned with the movement of small green pieces of paper, which is odd because on the whole, it wasn't the small green pieces of paper that were unhappy.
How about that?
Yeah, so
yeah, I think
that's my favorite. I love those 3 paragraphs because I think they deal with a lot of perspective.
Yeah, I think it does. So I'm just showing off a few more things. But Hitchhiker's Guide is one of my favorite fictional fantasy things. So
yeah,
I'm kind of giving you a tour of my living room here at the moment.
Do you remember what got you interested in space?
Well, I think it was just the potential of what could happen. Of course, my initial probably exposures were with Heinlein and Asimov. Of course, the what was it? Lucky and the Pirates of the Asteroids was one of my earlier reads when I was really young. So, and of course, I read the Foundation trilogy way back when I was in high school. So it was those kind of readings of science fiction that really got me interested in space.
So do you think children today get the same exposure to science fiction and space-related topics that you did?
I think there's a lot more competition with the with the visual medias that are out there now, and so I think that's another area of exposure, but it's a different type of exposure than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was books were the main thing, but now I think there's a lot of other things that bring younger kids into the area of space, and a lot of visual things. There's science museums and things like that get their interest as well.
Hey,
And of course, just the general interest in science makes a lot of science things are going on. There's some pretty amazing things in science, and some really big things are coming in the next 20 years along with space. So you got the asteroids and developing the moon, and space power satellites, solar space power satellites are really going to be a big thing, I think. But you also have things like artificial intelligence that's going to boost our capabilities quite a bit to develop new things. And then there's the genetic engineering, I think, is going to be a pretty big thing too, where we can cure a lot of diseases, and that's going to make people a lot healthier. And I think that'll give people a little better outlook on other areas of science, like developing space.
Yeah, it's you mentioned lots of things there. One is about the space-based solar power. I think one statistic I saw was that only 1/700th billionth of the sun's energy actually falls on the Earth. Which means with space-based solar power, you can essentially create an infinite amount of energy compared to what we've had.
Exactly. I mean, there's the ability to do thin sheet solar concentrators that are, just a fraction of they might only be 1/1000th of an inch thick, but they're able to reflect the sun's energy down to a focal point, and you can make a tremendous heat furnace right at that point where you're focusing all that energy from the sun. And then, of course, you can take that energy and turn it into all kinds of useful forms, including electrical energy that you can then beam down to Earth or use it for other processing in space.
I think there's an asteroid mining company called Transastra that's planning to put a bag around an asteroid and use a solar condenser to cause it to break apart.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty interesting idea.
The other thing you mentioned was about how the media changed between reading to like more movies and online and what have you. And as you were talking, I was thinking, whenever you're reading a book, you actually have to create those things in your mind. But whenever you're watching a show, it's all created for you. And I'm just wondering, if that missing that act of creation inhibits our ability to actually go out and create things.
It's possible that what you're saying has some truth to it, but that's part of the purpose of our society, of the Minnesota Space Frontier Society, is to engage young people with the concepts of space and to get them thinking about it a little bit more on a realistic basis. And I think that kind of overcomes that limiting factor of basically all being pre-digested and presented to the younger minds. I think the getting them to engage in a social situation involved with space development can really achieve a lot of things, and getting them to think deeper about the whole thing. I know we a lot of times at the conventions we'll put out space puzzles and various space construction forms to try to engage the younger kids while we're babysitting for the adults as they go off to their conventions and things. But so a lot of kids come in and are dropped off by their parents, and then we kind of present them with a lot of various items that can help engage them. We have a lot of space a lunar lander that's pretty kids always love that, to try to land a module on the moon. They always love doing that. And then there's a lot of other things, like we had for one year we had a pretty big contest on who could build the best lunar colony, so we had some fun with that. But unfortunately we our computer system kind of crashed halfway through, so we had a little bit of difficulty with a lot of that stuff at that particular session.
Oh, so those were all computer programs, the landing and the.
Yeah, those are computer programs and various things like that. So.
Oh, out of curiosity, which programs do y'all use?
At this point, I don't remember. I'm not the one that set up the program, so. But I helped set up the computers, but I didn't set up the software.
I was just thinking, we should try to replicate some of that here in North Houston as well. So maybe next time in Minneapolis, we could all meet up and you could kind of show me some of the things that y'all do.
Yeah, that'd be great. We can certainly get around to doing that. When are you planning to come up again? I know it's been over a year since we've met up here.
Yeah, right now our office in Minneapolis, everybody's working from home and the office is shut down. But the vaccine's being given out. My father-in-law just got the vaccine today. So maybe we're towards the end of this lockdown COVID thing.
Well, I think in a couple more months that they'll get to the point where they have. Once you get to about 75% of the people vaccinated, I think you're pretty well safe after that for containing it. A few people will still get sick, but they won't. It won't be quite as. It won't be a pandemic anymore. It'll just be, a little more mild. It won't be so capable of spreading and wiping out their society, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Society not getting wiped out, I think, is a prerequisite for society going to space.
Yeah, it's hard to go into space if you're dead. So
it is.
And also, if you don't have the resources, of course, that's always one of the things that bothers me. Is there's been a lot of articles and science fiction stories about how if you don't go while you have the resources, you might deplete the resources so much you can't go after that. So right now we have plentiful energy and a lot of materials, but 100 years from now, the oil reserves will be gone and a lot of other energy sources and the materials will be used, although possibly you can reclaim a lot of stuff from the junkyards, but it still becomes more and more difficult as you use up your resources to develop a space-based society.
It is, but I think a lot of it's being able to take your waste chain and feeding that back into your supply chain. I mean, if you look at a forest, it's not constantly needing to get new carbon. The same carbon goes through that entire ecosystem over and over and over again. We just have to get better at feeding our waste into our supplies.
Right. I mean that's true but it still takes a certain amount of energy to reclaim those supplies. So that becomes really the issue: is that will you have the energy in the future to do all this? And solar energy is great, except it's not concentrated enough to launch a rocket. So you have to convert it into some kind of propellant, and then that costs a lot and takes a tremendous amount of propellant to do that. So to get something into orbit, and that becomes a little more difficult. So there's been a lot of books and things written about how the fact that you have to do it while you have a plentiful source of energy in order to get you to orbit in a meaningful way and be able to harness those resources. But of course, once you're established in space, there's plenty of energy and resources out there if you can harness, start making use of those. So that's kind of what I've been pushing for, is to try to do it soon enough so that it's fairly easy to do. And of course, the high cost, ever since I started this, there's been a tremendous cost in getting into orbit, but the price has been coming down, especially in the last 5-10 years. The price has dropped pretty substantially, and I think it's going to become easier and easier to get into orbit and to accomplish things out there. And of course, our electronics getting smaller and smaller, making it more efficient to do things in space.
And have you been following SpaceX and what Elon Musk has been doing in Boca Chica, Texas, down here near Brownsville?
No, I haven't really seen too much. I do have his book here, one of his books about him.
Oh,
So,
yes, actually, Vance. I listened to that audiobook. That was good.
did you? Okay. So, but I have a tremendous number of books here. So I don't know, probably over 10,000 in my house here. So I have a lot of books, and I go through a lot of stuff here. So,
But you know his plans about building the Starship, a completely reusable spacecraft that would be able to carry 100 people to space at a time. You'd be able to use the same craft for point-to-point Earth travel, for getting into orbit, for going to the moon, for going to Mars.
well, I've put out some thoughts about that over the last 30, 40 years about how we should put in basically a space liner that is on a fairly fast orbit between Earth and Mars setup. So it's a reusable, it's a continually orbiting large spacecraft that can hold 100 people, or plus more than 100 people even. And then you get to that craft with a small craft that you take off from Earth or the moon and rendezvous with it, and then you don't that huge mass of material is in that orbit all the time. So when you get to the Mars area, you just get off on another small craft and are able to then go to Mars. So that idea has been around for a long time, and the fact that he's developing it and elaborating on it is a great idea.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is like the Aldrin cycler, the Mars Earth cycler that would be in like an orbit that would kind of intersect where Earth and Mars is ever so often.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Is I think that's a better idea than just having a one-time craft that's going to go. And the thing about having a continual orbiter is that you can build up shielding. So you've got the radiation shielding, whereas and you don't have to accelerate that shielding and deaccelerate it on each trip. So the energy costs are a lot less, and it's a lot more efficient.
Yeah, I know that totally makes sense, and you can also go there in comfort and style, and the fact that it takes 6 months or 3 months, I guess 6 months, to go between the two planets isn't such a big deal because you're kind of in a cruise boat. Maybe
Exactly. Yep.
maybe you have the spin to give you some sensation of gravity and all that.
Right. And that's one thing I've never understood is why we don't have a space station with spin. I guess people say you get dizzy, but I don't know. It seems to me if I guess I keep going back to the O'Neill colonies concepts, and if you make it big enough, you're not going to get dizzy from the spin, and you're able to produce a gravity then. Possibly not a full Earth gravity, but some gravity. And of course, there's a lot of advantages of having lower gravity too. Is that puts less stress on your body, and for old, I'm getting older now, so maybe they can get a low gravity station up there that I can migrate to, and that might make it a little easier for me to get around. Right now, I use a walker to get around pretty much all the time since I have some pinched nerve issues, and I don't have much feeling left in my feet. So that's one of the problems with being tall. I had some back surgery, and that didn't work out too well. So I had some nerve damage, and also I have diabetes, so I get a little neuropathy from that as well. So I'm basically slowly losing feeling in my feet. So I got it'd be nice to have a zero G environment to float around with, and I wouldn't have quite. I would think that I wouldn't quite have so many problems getting around.
Or maybe a tenth of a G, or a quarter of a G.
Yeah, I was thinking a third or a quarter would be pretty good. Of course, then they just tell me, why don't you just go to Mars? Then you're, what is it, a sixth of a G on Mars? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a third actually, a sixth of a G on the moon.
So I guess the moon's less. Yeah, so I'm confusing the moon and Mars right now.
But the SpaceX Starship, Elon's working on building a factory in Boca Chica that will be able to produce 2 of these a week, and each craft to be able to be used dozens of times, maybe hundreds, even thousands. And by the time, if he's able to do that, you would be able to have easy access, cheap access to orbit. You could build all sorts of things and get people I mean, travel would be kind of completely transformed.
That would be quite a transformation. Yeah, very much so. Of course, the big thing is getting off Earth into space. Once you're in space, you're I don't know who said it. I think it was Sturgeon that said that once you're in Earth orbit, low Earth orbit, you're 90% everywhere. So I think I'm not quite sure who I'm quoting here, but that seemed like a pretty good thought. And I think people don't really realize that either. You know, one of the things people don't realize is space is big, which we've already talked about. But the other thing is, you know, once you get into Earth orbit, you're almost everywhere, and it's not that hard to go to other places from low Earth orbit. And also, if you manufacture things in low Earth orbit, it doesn't cost a lot to bring it back to Earth. So this idea that space manufacturing won't be efficient because it costs so much to go up and down from Earth. Well, you only have to come down from Earth once you have resources being developed in space, and the cost is very minimal at that point. And one of the things I was always thinking about is that it'd be fairly easy to bring raw materials back to Earth in the form of a large sphere with a vacuum inside, and you could just kind of drop it on down to Earth, and with a reentry, it kind of would. If you make it low enough density, it would never hit the surface because it would just kind of float. And if it had a vacuum inside, the density would actually be less than the density of the air, so it would actually float in the atmosphere, and then you just harvest it with an airplane or a helicopter that could go out there and catch the space balloon, so to speak. And it could be made out of almost anything. You know, it could be made out of any high density, high strength material. You could even probably make it out of a lead, so you could have a lead balloon floating in space, and you could harvest that lead or gold or platinum or whatever. So I'm just saying that would be a conceivable idea to bringing back materials to Earth.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. It'd be interesting to see.
It's a little far-fetched, and people give me a hard time with the idea, but it's one of those things that I think eventually will happen.
I think, you know, how do you keep it from getting crushed by the atmosphere, you know, that it's strong enough?
Well, like I say, you make it out of a strong material. It's not going to be, that'll be able to resist that compression.
Yeah. That sounds really, really neat. It should be explored some more.
And like I say, one of the, I mean, it doesn't have to be a vacuum. It could be just hydrogen. It could be filled with hydrogen too, to give you the pressure to help it from collapsing. And of course, hydrogen's a lot lighter than air, so or helium for that matter. But helium's a little hard to come by in space, so I don't think there's not much of a source of helium in space. So a lot of hydrogen out there, though.
And you know, there's a company in Florida called Space Perspectives that plans to use a hydrogen balloon to take a group of 9 people up into the stratosphere. Just wonder if you heard about that. You know, kind of be able to see the blackness of space, the curvature of the Earth.
Right. Yes, I've heard about that too. I didn't know it was a hydrogen balloon, but I knew they were talking about taking a balloon really into the upper stratosphere and and letting people. I mean, you're very close to space when you get that high.
Definitely, and it's a lot more comfortable ride than taking a rocket.
True, but the trouble is you're not really in orbit. You're just kind of floating there. So in order to maintain an orbit, you could do various things like that. So but you still have to have the speed in order to have the orbital capability, or to be able to achieve an orbit and stay up there in a meaningful way.
Would it surprise you that most of the people I talk to that aren't in space don't know we're planning to send people back to the moon in 2024?
I'm losing your volume here, so I'm not quite sure what.
Can you hear me okay?
It's I need a little louder, and I'm at maximum volume here, so.
Oh, I see. Would it surprise you that most of the people I talk to don't know we're planning to send people back to the moon in 2024?
Yes, I fully realize that, because I talk to a lot of people and they have no clue. I'd say about more than 80% of the people don't even realize that that's in the plans right now.
Do you think if more people knew about it, they would oppose it or support it?
It's kind of 50-50, actually. And when I talk to people, you know, some of them if I just approach a person that I have no idea whether they're pro or con against space, an awful lot of people say, well, why would we even bother when there's so many problems here on Earth? So if I can engage them in the proper way to explain how developing space could help solve some of the problems on Earth, then they're a little more understanding of the needs of why we should do it. But a lot of environmental people tend to be negative on it, and that's a little bit of because they want to focus on the problems here on Earth. But then you start explaining to them how developing science and doing things and observing Earth from space is what's really evolved the ecological efforts on Earth, is being able to observe us as a whole planet and how we all interrelate. And once they kind of understand that perspective is partly why they are so pro-environmental, they start seeing the needs or start seeing the rationale of developing space.
And I guess how does that conversation usually go? How do you engage them to convince them?
Well, it's I guess I can't really I just kind of ask them some basic questions about science and things, and then kind of lead into the ideas of some of the space concepts that I think are valid and important.
Do you have some of your favorite?
Well, I've kind of already mentioned a few of them. Excuse me. But like I say, space-based solar power is one of the big ones, and then I talk about the observational satellites. I talk about the communication satellites. I talk about, hey, what us communicating on the phone is a major byproduct of space development, and developing the electronics, getting them smaller and smaller has been partly due to the science that's been in focus that's been put on getting things lighter weight. So those are 3 or 4 of the different areas that kind of show the evolution of science and how ecology and science and that all mesh together to be kind of self-supporting of each other.
That's true. One thing is also kind of innovation and discovery. So much of so many scientific ideas start out as a kind of a flash of insight or a gut feeling, and I just wonder, when we start observing the universe from the perspective of space, how many new flashes of insight and gut feelings we'll have that we're kind of blind to right now, since we all pretty much experience the same physical world, 24-hour day, 1 g of gravity, 1 atmosphere of pressure.
Well, I think an awful lot of what's going to happen in the area of science and space is really hasn't been to be discovered yet. I mean, there's an awful lot we don't know, and as we learn more things, then we find that there's more and more things that are to be learned. So we are basically very ignorant right now of what can be accomplished, and I think as we do more things, we'll discover that we can do more things, and there's a lot more things of interest to do.
Yeah, that absolutely. So if it was safe and affordable, would you go to space?
Well, I've always kind of been trying to be an enabler for other people to do things. Right now, I would have a hard time taking the zero G. I mean, taking the load factors involved in getting into space. I think it would be my body isn't as young as it used to be. So I guess I'd like to see some people that could be more productive. Right now, I'd just be kind of not very productive if I went into space myself, and I don't think I could accomplish too much up there. So I'd like to see somebody go that can truly be of use up in space. At the moment, key people are very much needed, and I guess I don't think I quite have enough of the right stuff to do that right now.
Have you heard of a program called Space Hero?
No, I haven't.
It's going to be launched later this year, but it's a worldwide reality TV show contest where the winner will get to go to the International Space Station for 10 days.
Well, it sounds like some person's going to be pretty lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah,
Is
and
it just one person, or is there multiple people going?
well, they'll have one person and a couple of backups, and I think they plan to do it probably multiple times over the course of several years. So,
Okay, well, that'd be great. And I haven't heard of that. Who's sponsoring that, or who's
well,
involved with that?
there's a few people in Europe that are organizing it, and I think it gets launched they have a countdown on their website, spacehero.me. And there you can sign up for their email list to be notified whenever they get a little further out. But yeah, in about 3 months, they should have all the details out there. But
Well, I'll have to check that out a little better when I have an opportunity to look at that.
yeah, I find that in my conversations with people, their interest really perks up whenever there's a possibility of them actually going to space. Otherwise, it seems very theoretical.
Yeah, meet people that have already gone into space, I think makes it a lot more real to people too.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Scott, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Well, I kind of wanted to show off our Facebook website a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so let me do that. And also, one of the things I think is pretty important in the future is harvesting the materials. Since I'm a metallurgical engineer, I'm kind of biased towards this, but I definitely think we want to harvest the asteroids and make good use of those materials. And the nickel doesn't corrode and making stainless steel is a lot better corrosion resistant, and you can make a lot longer lasting pieces of equipment like cars and railroads and things like that can all last a lot longer if we use corrosion resistant materials. But one of the books I've been reading is the new space.
Oh, the new riches of space.
New space gold rush. So
the new
so
gold
that's about
rush.
the asteroids and harvesting them there. And so that's kind of interesting. And anyway, so let me get up and I'll turn on my computer over here and you can get a look at the Facebook Minnesota Space Frontier Facebook page. Also, I had a nice, somebody gave me a space quilt out of t-shirts. So I got all my favorite t-shirts made into a quilt here, if you can see that.
Okay.
I got the Space Week t-shirt and Wave Your Pride and all kinds of good, I don't know if you can see all that. So let me, I'm not quite sure. Is there a way to turn your phone onto the other camera, or is that?
That I don't know. I just wonder if it might be better me bringing it up on my desktop and then I can share out and you can walk me through it. So you want to look at the Minnesota Space Frontier Society website or page?
Well, it's the on Facebook though. It's the Minnesota Space Frontier on Facebook. So here you can see some of our photos that are out there. Some of our displays. And we have a lot of rocket models and things. So I think you can see that fairly well.
I can, yeah. That's really amazing.
So we got so this is all out there on our Minnesota Space Frontier Society page here. So I think you can. This is on the Facebook software connection. So you can see we have a heck of a lot of models that people put out there. And, so these are some of the displays from the conventions that we've had. So we used to have let me go back. we have these panels over here. We got about 20 or 30 of those panels that we can make bigger displays out of. So there's a heck of a lot of stuff that we have when we put on displays. Here's a lunar globe that we have, which is a lot of fun to haul around in our. Just barely fits in my van.
Oh, that globe! Wow.
Yeah, the globe and the.
How heavy is it?
So it's a big. That's an accurate model of the craters on the moon. That's the backside there, of course. But, so anyway, I just kind of wanted to show a little bit about that, and we have a lot of postings and things every day. So if I don't know, so like you can kind of see that. So you can kind of see what we got here. I guess I got to go in as a visitor here. I'm the administrator, so you can see there's some of the stuff we have here. We post a lot of general information stuff about space and near Earth orbit stuff and asteroids. Here's our new logo. We have one of our members has a 3D printer, so he printed out some 3D medallions, but I have to get a hold of one and paint it. I think because it needs a little color to it. I don't know if you can see it very well. So anyway, I kind of wanted to show that a little bit and try to see if I can get some people to come out and take a look at it and add their comments to what they think of what we're putting out there.
Yeah, definitely. I have to follow a little bit more closely. And maybe we'll reshare some of the content in the North Houston Space Society as well.
Yeah, we could kind of merge that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we spent, the last 50 years, we've spent accumulating a tremendous amount of information and videos, and we produced a lot of various cable TV programs like Earth and Beyond. We did that for 2 years. Putting out a new show, an hour-long show about an hour-long show every month for 2 years, and then we had NASA News that we put with a 10-minute short every week. We did that for a year or two. Anyway, all those things have been archived, and we sent them to Dale Allman at the National Space Society, and they're supposed to be in the National Space Society archives. I think we sent over a terabyte of information. So there's a tremendous amount out there that we put out there. So just to let people know that we've done a lot of stuff, and there's been at least some of the space development conferences with both L5 and National Space Society. We were some of the teams that did the videotaping of those conferences. So a lot of that information we recorded. There was maybe sometimes as many as 5 tracks, and for 3 days. So there's a heck of a lot of historical information out there that we've provided to the National Space Society.
That's awesome. I should mention to you that I got this 1 terabyte micro SD card that I'm sending to the moon as part of Astrobotics, moon mission later this year. If there's anything from the Minnesota Space Frontier Society you'd like to send to the moon, I have room.
Okay. Well, we'll have to do that. I have to go through all that and see what we want to send out there.
I just have to.
Let's talk about that a little bit more after the call here. So.
Yeah, sounds good. I have to send it to them before the end of January, so they can integrate it with the rest of their payload. So.
Okay.
But well, good. I really appreciate you showing me all that. I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and then we could just finish up. Anything you want to add before I stop the recording?
Well, I just kind of want to say that we've got some good other members up here. We've got Dave Buth, Becky Husett, Ben Husett, and Dave Stewart, who used to be a member here, but he went off to Seattle, and now he's running a lot of the chapter activities for the National Space Society out of Seattle, or out there. And so I just want to say that we got a lot of hardworking members here that have done a lot over the years, and I want to say I appreciate their efforts, and I think they've done a pretty good job of getting us to where we are now.
It's pretty amazing. Well, thank you so much.